first part here is just a review of what we've been doing, right? So we want to convert each of these numbers to a different type of number. The first one, we have a fraction we want to turn to a decimal. We want to make sure that we're showing the work as we do this. So what are we going to do to change 3/16 into a decimal? Taylor? Good. So we're going to use the calculator and we're going to type in 3 divided by 16. So I'm going to write that down. Make sure that anybody who's looking at my paper knows that's how I'm getting this. And Taylor, what is 3 divided by 16? 0. What? 1875. Okay. We have the number 8. We want to convert it to a percent. So 8 is not a percent because we're converting it to a percent. So what kind of number is it? Is it a decimal or a fraction?
Decimal.
Yeah, we could actually think of this as a decimal, right? So if 8 was a decimal, then the decimal would be right here after the 8. So it would be 8.0, right? 8 is the same thing as 8.0 or 8.00 or whatever. So how do I change a decimal into a percent? Carl?
You're going to move 2 places to the right.
Okay, yeah, so we have 2 choices. We're either going to move the decimal 2 places to the right, and in this case, if I move it 2 places to the right, I'm going to have to do, what, Carl?
Huh?
If I move the decimal 2 places to the right, what do I have to add in there?
2 zeros.
Yeah, we're going to have to add in 2 zeros, so what do we end up with?
800%.
We get 800%. All right, another way to do this is just to take the decimal 8 and multiply it by 100. So we take 8 times 100%, and that gives us 800%. Okay, so it's the same thing we were doing before. To change a number to a percent, we multiply by 100, so 8 times 100% gives us 800%. All right, we have 0.1125. We want to convert that to a fraction. Who wants to help me with that one? What do we get first? When we change this to a fraction, what are we going to get? What goes on top? Okay, we get, it's 1,125. So it's just this number, but without the decimal point, without the 0, right? And then what's going to go on the bottom, Taylor? 10,000. Why 10,000? Yeah, this digit right here is in the 10,000ths place. Okay? What can I do with that, Taylor? I can reduce by what? Okay, what is 1,125 divided by 5? 225? And 10,000 divided by 5? What did you say? Okay, now what? We done? We can reduce by 5 again, okay. 225 divided by 5 is? 45? And 2,000 divided by 5? Are we done yet? We can reduce by 5 again, okay. 45 divided by 5 is? And 400 divided by 5 is? Can I reduce that? Nope. So we are done. Okay, and I know I can't reduce it. Even though 9 is divisible by 3, I know the bottom's never going to be divisible by 3. I only have to check 2 or 5, right? I can't reduce the 9 by 2. I can't reduce the 9 by 5, so I'm done. All right, 15/16. We want to make that a percent. So if we take a quiz, you get 15 right out of 16 problems. What percent did you get on it? How are we going to do that? Samaria?
15 divided by 16 times 100.
Good. So we do 15 divided by 16, which actually converts that fraction into a decimal. But then to change that decimal into a percent, we multiply it by 100%. And what do we get, Samaria? 93.75%. Good job. Okay, 5%. We want to change that to a decimal. Okay, good. So 5% means 5 out of 100. And another way of thinking about that is 5 divided by 100. So we do 5 divided by 100. We can just punch that into our calculator and get what, Jack?
0.05.
0.05. Good. Another way to do this is to take the decimal on the 5 and do what with it? Move it to the left how many times? 2 times. So since we're moving it to the left twice, we need a 0 here, and then put the decimal there, and then we're going to need another 0 in front of that decimal because we always want something in the ones place, so we get the same thing, 0.05. All right, last one, 2% to a fraction. What does percent mean again, everybody?
Out of 100.
Out of 100. So 2% means 2 out of 100. How do I write 2 out of 100 as a fraction?
2 over 100.
2 over 100. And is that my answer? What can I do with that? Simplify. It can reduce by 2. 2 divided by 2 is? 100 divided by 2 is?
50.
Can I reduce that?
No.
No. Can I ever reduce any fraction with a 1 in it?
No.
Nah. So we're going to start using percents for doing some different things. We've talked about how to convert between fractions, decimals, and percents. But this is actually a problem that we might run into out in the real world. We go to, say, Target, and we buy a pair of shoes, and we know the tax rate is 7%, which actually, if you go to the Target across the street, it's actually, I think, 9.25%. It's a pretty high tax rate there. But let's say that the tax rate is 7%. How do I figure out how much I'm actually going to pay for the shoes? Because I don't go to the counter and pay $60. I have to pay more with the tax added on. So how do I figure that out? So before we answer this, let me just say this. There are lots of different ways we could approach this problem. So we're going to talk later today about kind of a shortcut, how we can do this very quickly. But I'm going to do this a little bit of a longer way than what we're going to do later because it makes a little bit more sense for what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to pay two different things. We're going to pay for the shoes, which are the $60, but we're also going to pay the tax on the shoes, which is 7% of $60. So let's figure out how much the tax is going to be first, and then we'll just take that tax and we'll add it on to the original price of the shoes. So for the tax, what we need to figure out is what is 7% of $60? All right, so this is the key here. This is what we want to figure out. What is 7% of $60? Anybody think they can help me with that part of it? Carl? Carl says we should multiply these together, the 7% times $60, and I agree with that. The only problem is if we do 7 times 60, we get 420. Does that mean that we're paying $420 in tax?
No.
Probably not, right? I hope not. So what do I do?
Divide that.
Emily?
You multiply 60 and
What we're going to do here, rather than multiplying 7 times 60, we want to remember this is a percent. And percent means what? Out of 100. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this percent to a decimal. Rather than multiplying by 7, we're going to multiply by 0.07. And where does this 0.07, I'm going to make it 0.07. Where does that 0.07 come from? What kind of number is this? It's a decimal. What kind of number is this? A percent. How do I change a percent to a decimal? We just did it on the other side of the opener, right? We divide by 100. So what we're doing here is we're just changing this percent into a decimal, and then we're going to use that with the $60. Now, I have another question. Why are we multiplying here? When we say 7% of 60, why are we multiplying? Anybody know what this word of in math usually means? Not always, but usually means multiplication. So when we're finding a percent of something, we're going to be multiplying that percent times something. So that means that I'm going to be taking this 0.07 that I got for the percent and multiply it by the $60. All right, so punch that in your calculator real quick. 0.07 times $60. All right, so the calculator is going to tell us that 0.07 times 60 is 4.2. Now what we need to keep in mind is this is money, right? So it's $4.2. Now usually when you go to the checkout counter, they're not going to say it's $4.2. they're going to say it's $4 and
27.
20 cents? 2 cents or 20 cents?
2.
It is 20. Why is it 20?
Because it's in the tens place.
Yeah, this 2 here is in the tenths place. And when we're talking about money, this is something else that we're going to be dealing with a lot. We're going to be dealing with money a lot here. When we're talking about money, we want the hundredths place. So since the 2's in the tenths place, what can I put in the hundredths place? A 0. So it's $4.20. Now, that's not the answer to the problem, because I'm not going to buy a $60 pair of shoes and only pay $4.20, right? So how do I figure out how much I'm actually going to pay?
You add the $4.20 to 60.
Yeah, we take the cost of the shoes originally, we add on the $4.20 that we're paying for the tax, and that gives us a grand total of $64.20. Now, if you punch this into the calculator, this 0 right here isn't going to be there. Is it necessary? Do we need to put that 0 there?
Yeah.
Yes. Normally, after a decimal, if we have a 0 there, we don't need it. But we need it here because we're talking about money. And when we're talking about money, it either needs to be a whole number of dollars, or you need to have dollars and cents, which includes all the way up to the hundredths place. Just a quick thing to think about as we look ahead here. What if it was more than the hundredths place? What if we had something over here in, say, the thousandths place? Then what are we going to do with that? We're going to have to round it, exactly. So when we're talking about dollars and cents, we can't go past the hundredths place, so we're going to have to round to the nearest cent when that happens.